Tomorrow morning, at exactly 2:35 a.m. Eastern Time, while most of you are asleep, drooling on a pillow, dreaming about your ex or your crypto portfolio, a 15,000-pound piece of space garbage is going to slam into the moon at 5,400 miles per hour. That's 7 times the speed of sound. That's fast enough to turn 40 feet of aerospace-grade metal into a puff of dust in under a second. And here's the part that should really ruin your day. Nobody planned this. Nobody's controlling it. It's not a mission. It's not a test. It's just litter. Our litter. Falling out of the sky. Well, technically falling out of space onto a different sky because we forgot to clean up after ourselves. Again, this is a story of how SpaceX accidentally built the world's most expensive skipping stone and why an amateur astronomer in New Brunswick. Canada is more on top of this than NASA was for over a year. Let's get into it. So here's the timeline. Back on January 15th, 2025, SpaceX launched a Falcon 9 rocket carrying 2 lunar landers, Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost, and a Japanese company called a Space Lander, Resilience. Cute names. Very optimistic. Very. We are going to the moon, and nothing bad will happen. Energy. Blue Ghost actually did great. It landed successfully in March 2025 and ran NASA's science experiments on the surface. Great job, Blue Ghost. Gold star. But rockets come in stages, and once the upper stage, the second half of the rocket, basically the part that does the final shove into space, does its job, it's done. It's dead weight. And normally, dead weight either burns up in Earth's atmosphere or gets nudged into a nice, harmless orbit around the sun, where it can drift for eternity, bothering nobody. This one didn't get nudged. Nobody nudged it. It just started drifting for 19 months. Tumbling through space in what scientists politely call a chaotic orbit, which is a phrase that sounds like it should be on My Chemical Romance album, but is actually just physics speak for we lost track of where this thing wants to go. And where it wants to go, apparently, is straight into the moon. The object even has a catalog number now, because space junk gets its own government ID like it's checking into a hotel, 2025-010D, weighing somewhere around 4 to 10 tons, depending which report you read. Space agencies, please get your scale calibrated and roughly 40 feet long. For reference, that's longer than a school bus, moving faster than a fighter jet, about to hit a target with 0 atmosphere to slow it down. Now here's my favorite detail in this entire story. This wasn't caught by NASA's billion-dollar tracking systems. It was caught by a guy named Bill Gray. Bill Gray runs a website called Project Pluto, and he tracks space debris as basically a hobby, using data amateur astronomers send him in software he wrote himself, because apparently the U.S. military doesn't bother tracking stuff once it leaves Earth orbit. Once you're out past the moon's neighborhood, you're on your own. Buddy, good luck. No forwarding address. Gray first called this impact back on April 29, 2026, down to the date, the time, and eventually the exact patch of lunar dirt it's going to hit. And he wasn't even the first time he's done this. He's the same guy who, back in 2022, correctly predicted another rocket stage was going to smack the moon. Except, and this is a genuinely great plot twist, back in 2022, everyone assumed that debris was a SpaceX Falcon 9 too. Headlines everywhere. SpaceX rocket to crash into moon. Turned out, after more digging, it was actually a Chinese Long March rocket stage. SpaceX got blamed for a hit and run. It didn't even commit. This time, though, this one's real. This one's actually theirs. Confirmed, receipts and all. So NASA's official comment on all this, and I'm paraphrasing here, but barely. Yeah, some independent astronomers figured this out before we did, which is either deeply humbling or deeply hilarious depending on your relationship with government space budgets. Okay, logistics. The impact is happening near a crater called Einstein Crater, right on the moon's western edge as we see it from Earth, what astronomers call limb, basically the curved horizon line of the moon's disk. Time, about 6:35 and 37 seconds UTC on August 5th. That's 2:35 a.m. Eastern. If you're on the east coast of the U.S., Canada, or pretty much anywhere in South America, congratulations. You technically have a front row seat, assuming you're the type of person who set an alarm for 2 a.m. to watch a controlled act of littering hit a rock in the sky. Now, don't get your hopes up for a Hollywood explosion. The flash of the impact itself will last less than a second and will probably be too dim to see with the naked eye. This is an Armageddon. Bruce Willis is not required. But, and this is the actually cool part, the impact is expected to release energy equivalent to about 3 tons of TNT. And because the moon has basically no atmosphere and zero wind, any dust and debris that gets thrown up doesn't just settle back down politely like it would on Earth. It goes up, possibly for miles. And because the impact site is right near that bright curved edge of the moon, some of that ejected dust could rise up and become visible against the black of space for tens of minutes afterward, visible through telescopes. Even smaller backyard ones, if you know exactly where to point them. So, astronomers worldwide are literally setting alarms and pointing scopes at one specific patch of a specific crater on a specific moon at a specific second, hoping to catch dirt flying. And honestly, that's kind of beautiful. That's humanity's brightest minds gathered together to watch us throw trash and see what happens. Here's where we zoom out, because this isn't really a story about one rocket stage. This is a story about a mess. Humans have been putting metal on the moon since 1959. The Soviet Union's Luna 2 probe was the first of very deliberate crash landing. Since then, something like 70 spacecraft and boosters have landed or crashed there, including 6 missions that had actual humans inside them, which is a wild sentence to say out loud. But this, an unplanned, oops, we forgot to steer crash, has only happened once before. That Chinese rocket stage in 2022 that got wrongly pinned on SpaceX at first, that's it. That's the only precedent. This SpaceX stage is officially the second. And the reason it happened is almost annoyingly simple. It was avoidable. Space experts have said flat out that if SpaceX had just used a little extra fuel to nudge this upper stage into a solar orbit, instead of leaving it drifting near Earth-Moon space, none of this would be happening. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't even really negligent by industry standards. It's just the corner that gets cut when your business model is launch as many rockets as physically possible, as fast as possible. And that's the real headline hiding under the story. Space is getting crowded. Not crowded like your group chat. Crowded like there's an increasing pile of dead hardware drifting around out there with genuinely nobody minding it. And every launch add a little more to the pile. This particular piece of junk is basically harmless. It's hitting an airless rock 40 million miles from the nearest office building. But it is a preview, a free trial, if you will, of what happens when nobody's job is clean up after the rocket. Nobody's in danger. Nothing's exploding on Earth. This isn't a disaster movie. It's more like watching your neighbor's Amazon package finally get delivered after the tracking said delayed for 19 months straight. But at IS, a genuinely rare event. Only the second known accidental crash of human hardware into the moon ever. And it's happening while most of us are asleep, caught not by a space agency, but by a guy with a laptop in Canada. If you're anywhere on the East Coast, Canada, or South America, and you've got a telescope, or even just decent binoculars and a lot of patience, set that alarm. You might genuinely be one of the only people who watches humanity accidentally redecorate the moon in real time. And if you're watching this after the fact, drop in the comments whether you think we should be a lot more worried about space junk, or whether this is just cosmic scale littering that nobody needs to lose sleep over. I'll be reading every single one.